up guys, it's Joseph, and I'm here to give you a comprehensive review on the cast Ronin trucks. Let's get into it. Alright, here we have our lovely cast Ronin truck. They come stock with 92A fruit punch tall barrels, both roadside, board side. 2 cupped washers. The board side is some thin washer. The road side is a pressed stainless steel Ronin washer. Take these apart. There's that support pin. The hangers are very, very thick, very durable. Everything on here that's important is CNC'd. There's the hole for the support pin, a little bit of a bushing seat. It's pretty shallow. It's just barely enough to hold the bushings in place. But on this side, there is no bushing seat really. It's just a container for it basically. It'll move side to side. I'll show you the motion in a minute. It is a cast truck, but the axle has been pressed in to retain its intended strength and integrity, which means they basically cast the hanger, drill a hole through it, and then press the axle in. Pivot nub, that's CNC'd. Everything on here that needs to be is. The mounting holes are even CNC'd. So you got a little pivot hole there. You got your bushing. And they fit very, very snug on the kingpin, which is not a bad thing. There's that free-floating support pin. It's got about a 1/4 inch of travel, and that does allow for a little bit of vibration damping from the road, but what it's mostly intended to do is to keep the hanger at a steady angle and in the exact orientation that it should be. If you look between this point and this point, that is where the bushing seat is. Right in between there is a straight line where the bushing seat is, but as you can see, the axle is offset. That's rake. It's got about 13 millimeters of rake, and despite being a 42.5-degree base plate angle, it's very, very lively because of the tall barrels, the rake, and of course the support pin. And actually, right there, the little black mark, that is right about the center of that support pin. And the hanger will rotate only on that axis, only in this dimension. It holds the angle true, doesn't let it slop at all laterally, side to side. It just keeps the hanger straight where it should be. When you're in a turn, it still stays at its intended angle, doesn't slop around, and that makes it feel much more precise and solid in a turn. Gives it a tad more grip, just because it sort of evens out the pressure on the bushings, which evens out the pressure on the wheels. So you are kind of grabbing on both sides more, but it really is negligible once you get used to it. Like I said, the axles are pressed in, so you do have to be careful when you're putting on wheels. I'll demonstrate with the set of bearings and little spacers. So when you're setting up your wheels, you want to tighten everything down just enough to where it won't really move, but not before it's really tight and cranked down. Put on your other set. Now, once these are both tightened to about equal tension, then you can go and torque them all the way down. But you want to make sure that there isn't space on either side, because since the axle isn't cast in, like on, say, a bear, the axle doesn't have those gnarly diamond knurls. it's got straight knurls, so you can, if you're not careful, pull the axle out of the hanger. So as long as there's the space being occupied there by the spacer, the speed rings, and the bearings, then you'll be totally fine. I'll show you how cool that bushing seat is. I'm not going to put a bushing board side, just to show you kind of how it reacts. So if you'll notice, as you lean, it sort of occupies the entire space of that bushing seat. You see? So it's not big and empty for no reason. Now you do have to be careful when you're running cupped washers because of that crazy lean. The edge of the cupped washer will bite into the side of the hanger, causing, you know, the kingpin to pull up, and it can snap the base plate. So I prefer to just run the cupped washers flipped so they're flat, or run flat washers. But it's not a big deal, gives them a much more lively, surfy kind of feel. It's a grade 8 pressed in kingpin, so the kingpin is not going to break. It'll be the base plate that breaks before that. Not to say that it's weak. It uses a pivot tube, not a pivot cup, because unlike a normal cast truck, the weight is not being put on the end of the pivot. The weight is being put on the support pin. It's sort of... when the weight is being put on the pin, since it holds the actual hanger, all the weight is going to this. None of it is being pushed up onto the end of the pin cup, or sorry, pivot cup. So it just needs walls to rotate inside of. And there are a few different formulas and companies that make pivots for this, such as Riot and Riptide. They use tall barrels, 0.75 inch tall barrels. A lot of companies now are making these. Venom, Riptide, Riot, Ronin makes their beverage series, which I love. Run a fruit punch board side and a lemonade roadside. Makes for awesome free-ridey goodness. I've been riding these for around a month now. Been riding really hard, and they've been doing great for me. They feel stable on straights because of that 42.5 degree base plate angle, but when you go to turn, it will turn and lean and lean and lean and turn and turn and turn. And that's what the advantage of the tall barrels is. There's much more urethane to compress, as opposed to having a shorter bushing and not getting as much lean out of it. They're amazing trucks. They're more stable than a .44 caliber and more lively than a Paris, I promise you. With the appropriate bushing setup, of course. Alright, now the last thing that I want to mention is why the bushings for cast run-ins are so much harder than what you would normally run in a truck. It's due to, of course, the low base plate angle. The lower the angle, the harder duro you want to run. Also because they're tall barrels and there is more to compress, you do want to run a little harder because the bigger it gets, the more easy it is to compress, I suppose. And also because the support pin, it evenly distributes the weight between the roadside and boardside bushing. So unlike a cast truck without a support pin, you would normally run the harder bushing boardside to support your weight. Not the case with cast run-ins because the support pin keeps equal compression on both bushings. So, and that is also the reason for the slightly increased grip. But it means you don't have to worry about putting a softer one boardside and having it wear out quicker. It's not the case. In fact, you can get different feels just from switching the which one's on top and which one's on bottom. I used to run the softer board side, because it would give a more divey, progressive feel. But for free riding, I discovered I like the Fruit Punch board side, which is a 92A. I'm only 135 pounds. 92A is a little bit ridiculous, you would think. Nope, it turns 7-foot circles on my 30-inch wheelbase. I'd say that turns enough. But it's still stable for me enough. I feel totally confident on these things. I feel like I can do anything. Not to say that you should just because you have these. Build up your skill, wear a helmet, always ride safe, but these definitely inspire some crazy confidence, and if you get them, I assure you, you won't be disappointed.
In short, they're fun.